Welcome, everybody, to the Global Creativity Initiative webinar presenting Laura Barbero Switalski. Before we start, I just want to tell you all that we are recording this so you can watch the recording on a YouTube channel linked to our web page where you did register. So it will be able to look at this afterwards. And please be muted during the presentation. Laura's going to speak for 25 minutes approximately, and then there will be plenty of time for discussion. You may write questions or comments in the chat while she speaks, or save it for the discussion later. We're so happy that we will have this abundant time. And we are so happy to have Laura here. She's the co-founder of the annual CREA Conference, which is held in the very picturesque town of Sestri Levante, Italy. So the CREA Conference is focused on applied creativity. That emphasizes learning by doing with hands-on activities designed to unlock creative potential and has become a renowned gathering for professionals, educators, and people dedicated to exploring creativity, creative problem solving, and innovation and facilitation. I myself attended CREA Conference last April, and what was striking to me then was the fantastic, immersive, and collaborative atmosphere. I felt that people were genuinely interested and curious about each other and wanted to network and to learn and share. So I found myself wondering how that unusual atmosphere came about. And that leads us up to the topic of today, creative climate in action. Laura has been instrumental in shaping CREA into a leading event in the field of creative problem solving. She's recognized internationally for her expertise in facilitating creative processes, training organizations, leaders, and individuals, both through her company Darwin Associate and through teaching creativity and real-world problem solving at the International Center for Studies in Creativity at SUNY Buffalo State University in New York. Laura is also the co-author of the book Creativity Rising, Creative Thinking and Creative Problem Solving in the 21st Century. So it is with great pleasure I welcome you, Laura Barbero Switalski from Mexico City this time.
Yes. Thank you, Elizabeth. That's such a great introduction. And yes, I am this week in Mexico City, and I am based in Buffalo, New York, where also the Center for Applied Imagination and Buffalo State University is. And I do some work there and beyond other work around the world. And I am so grateful and honored to be here today and to speak about a topic I have a true passion for. I was explaining to Elizabeth before is because it's so connected. Climate and culture are so connected to leadership, and I have a passion for leadership development and leadership work. And so I'm going to start sharing my screen and just start giving you a sense of what are we talking about today? And it is the idea actually came up from a conversation that Elizabeth and I had, and it was really about the creative climate in action that she witnessed at CREA Conference when she attended in April. And thank you, Elizabeth, for this vivid description of that atmosphere at CREA. And you asked me actually, is this by design? And I said, well, there is a little bit of design, of course, around this event and the design. And so I said, are you familiar with climate and culture and Göran Ekvall dimensions. And so we start talking about that. And I said, okay, why don't we, she invited me to do this webinar, connecting the creative dimension of Göran Ekvall, which I will explain, and with CREA Conference as a case example, like, a case study, a living example of how we put those dimensions in action. Now, what CREA is a conference that we started in 2003, just to give you a little bit of context. So we are celebrating next April the 22nd year of anniversary of CREA Conference. It gathers typically 100 to 180 professionals from all over the world, including some staff and leadership and our amazing facilitator team, of which I will talk quite a bit about. And then it's in Sesto Levante, and it's just a great event, an annual event that we work together to build, and we have been building this throughout so many years. So what I would like to start with is to share this framework we'll call the system model of creativity. This framework was developed at the Center for Applied Imagination. It used to be called the International Center for Studies in Creativity. Now we are called the Center for Applied Imagination, and at Buffalo State University. And it's obviously built on the 4 P's for creativity, right? But show creativity as the expression of 4 main facets, but show these as a system that interact and is a system for how creativity works and works in organization. So it all starts with people. It always starts with the person, right? The creative person, the knowledge, the attitude, the motivations that will have people, the mindset, right? That people will approach to be creative and to do creative work. And then people, creative people meet process, and processes, creative processes, thinking skills, stages, methods, tools that we use to bring about, to solve challenges, opportunities. People and process, however, this connection and this working to the end of a creative product does not happen in a vacuum. It happens in a creative environment, which will be the focus of our talk today. Environment is so important. We can have an environment that encourages creativity or stifles creativity, right? And so when you see on top of this word leadership and the arrow down, that means leadership is so fundamental and influential in shaping the climate and the environment for creativity. We will talk more about that with some core example. So interaction of people, process, and environment, creative people, creative process, and creative environment, bring us to the creative product, which will be tangible or intangible, tiers, ideas, solution, product, service, innovation, inventions, anything that is the result of that interaction. And it is, however, distinguish what is innovation. A question that probably you all working in this field have been asked so many times. What's the difference between creativity and innovation? Obviously, innovation happens only when we have adoption, when we got into full execution and implementation of that. And so whether it is a social change, personal, professional, an innovation, a creative change occurs only when people adopted a new product, a new policy, register to the conference. In our case, CREA Conference will be the product, right? In the interaction of people, process, and environment. Now, you see this innovation feedback, this iteration, that means once we have produced that creative change, that innovation, then this will feedback the environment, the people, and the process, and obviously will encourage more expression of that creativity. I always start with this framework because I love framework and I love people to be located to say, okay, so there are so many different facets we can work on in creativity. But today we're going to talk about environment. We're going to talk what is environment? Environment is the physical and most importantly, the psychological climate, like a workplace where people work and is composed by your culture, your organizational culture, but also your climate. And we'll talk more about what is, and it's so important to know the leadership practices are so influential in shaping it. So what is climate? Climate, when it is connected to culture. It is very related to culture, but what is interesting is the culture is really hard to change. So as a professional, consultant, practitioner, so many times I've been asked by people, by leaders I work with, oh, Laura, we need to change the culture in this place. And the answer was, well, that's a bit hard. And why it's hard to change culture, to tackle culture that way? Because culture is really comprised of the values, the beliefs, the history, the tradition, reflecting the deeper foundation of an organization. So the norms, the assumptions. So a lot of people have written about organizational culture, of course, but one of the most renowned images is the iceberg, right? The iceberg means that in the when you are below the iceberg is where all these values, beliefs, history, tradition are, and you don't see them. It is what the organization values, but I can't see them. I can't experience them. And then climate instead is what Göran Ekvall described as the recurring patterns of behavior, attitudes, and feelings that characterize life in the organization, which is really literally what organization and people experience every day at work, right? What is your climate? And why is it easier to work on climate than to work on culture? Because I can work on something that actually people live and express and they can observe every day. And when I explain to organization, climate could be different in the same organizational culture. I can have a department that has a certain climate, like marketing or sales, and then finance can have another climate, right? And that has a lot to do with the leadership practices. How do we manage our climate or our microclimate? So by working on climates and on different climates, eventually we're going to impact the culture. That's for sure. But it's like working on something that is more manageable and that we can actually see. And why is that so important? It's important because the organizational climate, the actual place where we work, influences, I would say, everything. I would say the process, our communication, the way we solve problems, the way we make decisions, and the outcomes, how we can be the innovation outcomes, the quality, the employee satisfaction, the profit even. So it's so important, it's so impactful. And as we already share and said, and I can't overstate it enough, leaders create the climate. Leaders in many studies account for 40 to 80% of the variance of the influence the leadership has in shaping the climate. That's a big, big number. And it means that leadership practices are what are very instrumental in creating the climate. And in turn, the climate is really important in impacting the productivity and the creativity of an organization. So when before I continue, because I'm going to go to introduce the creative climate mentioned by Göran Ekvall, I just like to pause a moment and maybe just to think, have you think about this question. Think about your work environment, you know you very well because you consult with them or you are. What stimulates or in this creativity in your work environment? What are the elements, the factors that can stimulate that or hinder that? And you can even drop something in the chat if you want in that reflection. When you are at work, what encourages people to express creative thinking and creative behavior? Right? Friendly communication, says Elizabeth, right? And what hinders that? What stifles their ability, right? Let's see if somebody else is typing anything, stuff, habits. So habits can, habits can also hinder, and conflict can hinder, and respect for diversity can encourage. So thank you. And we'll talk more about that. So thank you for putting these in the chat. Ekvall, most of you probably will know him. Was a Swedish researcher. Is not any longer with us. And an organizational psychologist who worked for so many years at Volvo. Volvo gave him the opportunity to do a lot of research about organizational climate and what are the dimensions of the climate that encourages creative behavior and creative thinking expression, and what hinders that. And Göran Ekvall work also on an assessment for organizational climate with Dr. Scott Isaacson, and that assessment is called the SOQ. We will present the dimension right now that are presented using the assessment that people, organization use to actually measure the creative climate dimensions in the team or in all the department of the organization. So the work of Göran Ekvall has been really, really seminal and so important to really understand how you create the creative climate. Back to that image, I talked about the iceberg before, but now I'm using the tree, okay? And when I'm using the tree, we're going to see that the roots are what we don't see: the culture, the customs, the history, the values, the beliefs, the tradition, all that part that we can't see. But what we can see is here on top. We can see the dimension of the climate. So our climate as dimensions that stimulates creativity, and those dimensions that Ekvall has identified are trust, openness, challenge and involvement, freedom, risk-taking, playfulness and humor, idea time, idea support, debate, and conflict as a negative dimension. And we'll talk about the difference between debate and conflict in that, okay? So what I like to do is to illustrate briefly dimension, and then for each of these dimensions tell you how do we do it at CREA. We have actually actively try to bring these creative dimensions that encourage creative climate at this CREA conference event. And the first important things is really to talk about this group of people. This is a photo of several years ago, but this is a group of our facilitators. So who are the facilitators at CREA? These are volunteers, people who come every year to bring their they are extraordinary professionals from all over the world. They bring their expertise, their knowledge, and talents, and skills for free. They pay for their travel and their accommodation. And people say, how do you manage that? Well, these people come there because there is a strong intrinsic motivation. We talk about that. And because it is really creating this, what we call the creative learning community of CREA. So these are the people who are bringing the programs to our people, to our participants. They are bringing the workshop. We also have participants proposing workshop, and they will be also called presenters. But we start working with the facilitators who are actually members of our organization, because when we create a creative climate in the relationship with them, then they will bring this creative climate to the people at the conference, right? So it is all a reflection of that. So in my example, I will also talk about the relationship with these, our army, we call, or facilitators on the ground, and how we do that. So let's start with the first dimension. And the sequence of the dimension that I'm going to use is not going to be accidental. They are all connected to each other, and there is a sequence that is there for a purpose, right? So we start with trust and openness because it is the foundation of everything in an organization in terms of the creative climate. So Ekvall defined trust and openness, the emotional and psychological safety in relationship, right? I add psychological safety because it is really important. And when in organization I have emotional and psychological safety, people can bring forward their ideas. People can take initiatives and can do so without fear of any retribution, ridicule if the idea fails. So it is really so important, foundational, that people can be open in their communication and their expression of the ideas for creativity to flourish. So everything starts from this. So, okay, trust and openness at CREA. What do we do? So this is a device, a tool, a stretching thing that is called the nest. We used it several years ago, but it's a symbol. It's a symbol of the great emotional and psychological safety space that we try to create, to build a CREA all the time, in which people can really talk about and exchange their ideas, their opinion, their viewpoint of being really feeling safe in doing so. We start doing that with our facilitator and creating the safe environment to talk and to express our ideas, opinions, and then this is brought to our participant, where that feeling of expression is shared. And I think that one of the significant events we have at CREA is this welcome session that is Wednesday afternoon when a participant arrive, and they are greeted by a group of people, ourselves and our facilitator, who almost do a one-on-one in which they start really making them feel welcome, but also start the circulating of communication and ideas and experiences. So that is one way we really encourage that trust and openness from the very start. And I think that the nest that we call that is also a symbol for what we call the CREA hug. The CREA hug is really something that you see around. People actually hug each other. And mostly, of course, you see that towards the end of the event, in the closing. I think people who come at CREA for the first time are a little bit at the beginning say, why people are hugging here? What's going on? But then everybody will be free and open to do that by the end of the conference and during that time, because there is the great feeling of emotional safety. Now, dimension is challenge and involvement. And what Ekvall described is the degree to which people are involved in daily operations, but also in long-term goals and vision. So the principle of the challenge and involvement dimension is people need to be intrinsically motivated. And intrinsic motivation is the fuel, right, of creativity. We know that from the research of Dr. Amabile, another fellow researcher at Harvard. People are creative in the organization not because they have a higher salary or because they got like in a promotion necessarily, but everything that is called extrinsic motivation helps, of course, but it's the intrinsic motivation that motivate people, actually encourage people to go the extra mile and to fuel, like, the passion for the work they do. So what is important in order to do that, yes, is that people are involved, are engaged, and they have challenge. People need challenge to get engaged and to get involved. So how do we do this in our own CREA conference? And of course, you see a typical complex image of challenge and involvement at CREA, but we do start with our facilitator team from the very beginning, from the summer, sending an engagement survey, asking them, what do you like to work on? What is your passion? That is important. If I work on something I want to work on, I'm going to bring all my motivation, all my passion to that. And then everybody at CREA, when you come to the conference, is challenged to take on, to be engaged, but to take on something that can be a little bit complex sometimes. And it could be a new tools, a new methodology. Sometimes it could be rock balancing, right? But just encourage people to get deeply involved at CREA. The third dimension that is following from this is freedom. And freedom is the independence in behavior exerted by the people in organization. This speaks of autonomy. And we know that autonomy is the main driver of creativity and productivity at work. People can be creative if they are micromanaged, right? So people are creative when they can make their choices, when they can make some choices about what they're going to bring, what they want to do, what initiative they can take. We cannot make all decisions, right? We always refer to somebody else in organizations, but can I have an autonomy around the work that I am doing? And that is so critical for people to be motivated, and it's so connected to the trust and to the challenge and involvement, as you can see. Can I just lead myself? Do I have agency? Fundamentally. And so freedom at CREA. Now, how do we do? Of course, autonomy is very important. Our facilitator can come to deliver programs for our participants, and we align with them on core objectives and core methodology, which for us is very interactive. We don't want people just to be lecture. We want people to be hands-on, as Elizabeth said, and being interactive. Once we have established those principles, they are on their own. People work and present us as well. They send us description of a workshop, and then once we accept them, okay, you are good to go. And I can give you a coach. We actually offer people a free coaching experience with some of our experienced facilitator to attend their workshop, give them feedback, give them some guidance, but you are free to and to do your work. And so this is a photo, an illustration of a workshop we had this past CREA called the CREA Anarchy. When I read the workshop description, it gave me the chills. I said, this is going to be pure madness. Are we sure we want to do that? But at the same time, of course, let's trust, let's go. And it ended up being an incredible experience where people were really able to create chaos, but also create, really have a very meaningful creative experience there. And of course, we have more structured experience, but the point here is we have room for everything, right? At CREA, and that's the principle of freedom. Risk taking. Okay, everything is in sequence here. If I have trust, if I have openness and challenge and involvement, and then I have freedom, I can take risk, because risk taking is the tolerance of uncertainty and ambiguity exposed in the workplace. And it means that people need to have a tolerance about the possibility of failure. What am I doing? Can it fail? Yes, it can. But I cannot produce any creative outcome if I don't try to bring something different, if I don't take a risk, even a small risk, right? So that is really vital. Risk-taking is vital for creativity in organization. And we know that it's so supported by the trust, because if I don't have psychological and emotional safety, I will be very fearful of risk-taking. So how do we do it at CREA? Well, CREA Conference is a place for great experimentation, and that is one of probably the increasing motivation of our facilitator or presenters when they come there, because it's the place where they can also experiment something new. I said, this is a place where it's safe to bring something different, something new. You're writing something, you are working on something. Come here and bring it, and just let's work on it hands-on. And everybody is encouraged at CREA to take a little risk, given the freedom of choice, right? So you can choose to do it or not, right? Any small things you want to exactly take an improv session, right? You want to, try a new tool, have a conversation with somebody you don't know, walk the labyrinth. We'll talk about that at the end. These are all choices you can make to take the little step to step out of your comfort zone. Everybody's encouraged to do that. And in order to step out of our comfort zone, playfulness and humor are really important. So what is Ekvall described playfulness and humor as the spontaneity and is displayed within the workplace, which is really about the relaxed atmosphere. People can make jokes, can laugh, have laughters, can have a little bit of lightness with it is serious play. It's not necessarily playfulness can be very serious. It can bring a lot of great creative outcome. But what is important is that we create this atmosphere that is of relax and of smiles. And so at CREA, of course, we start with our facilitators to really bring playfulness in our retreat with them, and then with everybody. CREA is a great playground for all kinds of plays, whether are verbal or kinesthetic or auditory. I mean, there is a lot of room to play, and that is really we can see that, we can feel it even in the restaurant, which is why people gather for our meals. There is a lot of chattering and conversation, a lot of laughters and smiles are contagious, and that is important, because then is when people feel really safe and happy to engage. And this takes us also to the other the dimension, that is idea time. Now, idea time in organization is the amount of time people can and do use for elaborating new ideas. Great organizations who give idea time, who encourage the idea time, actually allot a certain percentage of time of the employee beyond the timesheet that they have for business as usual or the work activity, to actually work on new ideas, to actually work on something new and think about something new. If I don't have allotted the time, there is never time, right? We are always running out of time in our working life. So is so critical, is so important that people know. So there is a little bit of percentage of time that I can devote to elaborate and to think up with new ideas alone or with my colleagues. And at CREA, idea time, of course, is something that we give to the facilitator. They start like in the fall to build something for the spring, or the presenters, they have a workshop proposal. We accept that they can have all the time to build it. But one principle of idea time we really love and encourage at CREA Conference is what we call incubation, right? And we know what incubation is in creativity and in creative thinking. Is reflection, is really leaving the time for ideas to sink in and to think about them. And this culminates in 3 days and a half that goes into the closing ceremony, when people really share their learning. And that is the time for the time of ultimate reflection shared together in the learning community. Now, it's really important to see that this reflection, it's vital, right, for creativity. This is a very important moment in which I can have that idea time for myself and to share with others. And when I have idea time, how do idea support? Now we are going to the seventh dimension of Ekvall. And so what is idea support? The ways new ideas are treated. So if I am a leader, a boss, and somebody enters my office or encounters me in the hallway and say, hey, I have a great idea or a new proposition for something. If I respond, oh, yes, so let's just sit down a moment and talk about that. Oh, I don't have time right now, but wow, I will schedule a meeting to talk about your ideas. I'm curious to know. Or I can say, no, I just really don't have time for that. And we don't have the money. And we have maybe already tried that. And all those killer phrases of ideas that we know happens in organization. Now, I model that as a leader. Now, so how do I treat the new ideas? How do I encourage people who come into me to actually bring new ideas to me? And how do we do that at CREA? And that's, of course, the symbol of the idea. Well, but we do it through the application of what we think is our we believe is our core methodology connected to creative problem solving, but it's divergent and convergent thinking, right? And so when we embrace the key principle, the core principle of divergent thinking, we know that the most important principle on top is defer judgment, right? And when I defer judgment, I'm open to listen to all ideas, and I am there to embrace them and just, give a good hearing to all ideas. When it comes time to converge and to evaluate and to make a decision, is this idea relevant? Is this useful? Does it have value? Then I am in a critical thinking mode, and our core principle there, one of the core, is affirmative judgment. Use affirmative judgment, which means don't kill this idea, but start looking at what is positive. What are the potentials of these ideas? So these are the things that I start. Then I can share my concern, my doubts, my questions. And just by doing that, by use affirmative judgment first, I model the idea support. At the end of the day, not all ideas are feasible. Not all ideas are good. Not all ideas can be executed or implemented in organization. However, let's try to give them a good chance, a good hearing, and not kill them from the start. Because when we do that, then is also when we can have debate. And what is debate? Debate is the occurrence of encounters and disagreement between viewpoints, ideas, and different experience and knowledge. If in an organization everybody thinks alike, well, we can't have creative outcomes. We have different styles, different ways of thinking. So it is so critical that we have what I call creative friction sometimes. Creative friction is what brings new ideas. And because we do have different ways and different opinions, and we want to have the emotional and psychological safety, you see how we are circling back to trust and openness to be able to express and speak up and express our different point of view, something without, and these are debates about ideas and issues. It's not about the person, it's not about you, it's about the idea. And at CREA, that is kind of inevitable because it's a very diverse crowd. We have diversity of cultures, many different cultures, ages, generations. We have diverse of professional background and people coming there. So having debate, having the exchange of different opinions and viewpoints, it's inevitable and is actually encouraged and is nurtured at CREA. And that is important because we bring this with the facilitator, starting with our community. Sometimes they challenge our strategic direction of what we think, and we need to be open and listen and connect and communicate with them. And then in our workshop, in our programs, there is always a robust exchange of different ways, ideas, which, however, will never end up into conflict. Conflict is the only negative dimension that Ekvall in his also assessment highlights as the presence of personal and emotional tensions. So conflict is about people, is interpersonal, is not about ideas. So debate is about ideas. Conflict is about creating a climate that is suspicious, where you are my enemy. And if you are my enemy, and if there is suspicion, we can have trust. Right? And then we feel come back to the beginning. And if we cannot trust, we can be open. We can get into the challenge. We can feel all the things that we have been talking about. So what we know is that we try to transform everything from conflict to a debate. Is not about the people, is about the ideas. So at CREA, you can see this image, you can see this acting of a potential conflict between two people, but people are smiling in the back, right? And that is important to see. There is an atmosphere in which there is emotional and psychological safety, and that's why we make sure that there is no conflict there, because even if there are diverging different opinions and viewpoints, it's something that is expressed about ideas, with debates, with trust and openness, with all the other climate dimension supporting it, and also discouraging any aggressive behavior, right? If anything like that occur or happen, is immediately discouraged, but I actually do not remember this happening. So I want to wrap it up because I really would like to have some good discussion with this group. And it is really about the labyrinth is one of the symbols of CREA from the very start. It embodies who we are. This is the beach of Sesto Levante, the village on the Italian Riviera, and the labyrinth is a Chartres labyrinth, although it's coming from the Chartres Cathedral in France. But the labyrinth, we chose this image to the end because we think that the labyrinth encompasses all the climate dimensions. Because if you want to walk the labyrinth at CREA, is an individual choice. It typically is something you do solo, maybe with other people around, but it's a solo walk. Well, it's a great trust into the unknown. It's taking a little risk. It's taking a little challenge because you don't know what encounter when you get into that reflection. And from my also personal experience, I walked the labyrinth many times. It is the greatest idea time of all, because that's where everything sinks in, and there is the incubation and the reflection. And so in the labyrinth, you can find support for your ideas, or even have a steer debate within yourself. It's always a free choice. And it can be playful and it can be very serious. So I'm ending up here with this presentation just to see with this beautiful image of the labyrinth, and just now encouraging some question, answer, and discussions.
Thank you, Laura, so much. And you get applause here from the audience. So now we have time for discussion, and you can use the hand to raise your hand
Sure.
so I can see who is first. And thank you, Laura, for bringing up the challenges, because I was thinking about how you choose people, but I'll wait with my questions. And Franklin put up his hand first, and then Ruth.
Yeah, for me, it's not actually a question, but it's a comment.
Please.
I am happy to learn more about this. Your presentation was so great. We live in a world today where we have so many smart people, but more and more we fail to work together. Our capacity environment where everyone can feel comfortable, safe, and trusted reduces the more and more. And when this kind of courses can be developed, I think that it should spread across every corner of the world because this is what we want, not just the theories we learn in the classrooms and so on. We need this kind of knowledge quite often to remind us that, of course, we are in a world, and for us to move forward, we need to create this kind of environment in order for us as person, as individual, as organization to emerge. Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you to you. It's absolutely true, and it's what I also call this is the human side of creativity and innovation, I would say, Franklin. And I know, reflecting on all the anxiety that exists about artificial intelligence nowadays, right? About that, I always say, yeah, that's going to be a great tool. It is a great tool already, and it's going to be for us. And is not a but, it's a and. It will be all up to the human connections to make it work for the best.
Ruth. You need to
Unmute yourself.
unmute first. So, yeah.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I thought this was a very engaging presentation, Laura, and I particularly liked the pictures. So I feel the proof is in the pictures that you had people jumping and yelling and applauding each other. And I completely agree with Franklin. What I think of it and write about it in terms of a win-win solution versus win-lose, where this person does better and means that person does worse and we're competing. That we need a different kind of world. I wanted to comment on how you brought in systems in your first slide and then in a lot of the discussion, but because some of us are very interested in and have even edited books on non-linear dynamical systems. So we're taking this to a further extreme of chaos theory and opening the door to sudden bifurcations, to new solutions and cultural, let's hope, cultural and and climactic change. So I just wanted to mention that as a elaboration, if you will, and that this is one of the things GCI tries to do in terms of being open to emergent things. We don't know where it came from, but without GCI, it wouldn't have happened. I really think GCI is very fertile for that, and clearly your pictures are too. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Ruth. That's really great. And I second what you say about system and system thinking, and it's becoming so much more important today, given the complexity, right, of the problems that we have to solve, we face every day. So it's all systemic.
Good. So maybe now it's time for my question. I don't see any hands up right now. So about the challenges, and I'm thinking about what you started with, that it starts with the person. So when there is a team, there are many individuals. So how do you choose the individuals in a team?
How do we choose individuals in a team? So say
Yeah.
more. What do you mean choosing? Like,
But how do you put a team together? Because there need to be trust. Do you when you hire people, or when you take people into the team, do you first do an interview about how their attitudes towards working together, or trust and playfulness and risk taking and these things that you mentioned, or?
Yeah. So I mean, aside from CREA, like just broadening to what happens in organizations, I think that teams, best teams are are diverse, right? So diversity of thinking, diversity of any kind, like and there's like all kind of diversity and generational, gender, social background, professional background, but the professional background is also important. We want to build teams with people bringing different skills, different abilities, different knowledge. So you have that, and then also different ways of thinking, different. So we use at the Center for Applied Imagination, one of the key assessment that we use is foresight, for example. And foresight is a really great assessment to really gauge what is how you approach problems when you want to solve problems, right? And so you may have different kind of approach thinking styles, for example, for that. Not that we use this assessment for recruiting people, but it's more the understanding of how people could be different and could work differently. And then, of course, it's about getting together and start establishing the trust. What I learned with my team and in CREA, because we also work on ourselves at CREA Conference, our leadership team. We have just done a couple of sessions with a great facilitator, external to us, is that a team is a new team every time you have a new member coming in or a member going out. So you have to really reshape and rethink about what you have, just by one person, let alone two or three. And what happens today in any organization is that teams are really dynamics because there is a lot of changes, right? People going in and out, right, of teams, working with other staff. So how do you continually work into creating that kind of trust and work together with teams when you have this continuous change? That's a big challenge that leaders and people have in organization today. But I just think that an important part is really being very aware of the importance of working together, establishing some important ground rules, right, and ways of working for a team where you can establish that trust and that collaboration. And it's like your question, Elizabeth, is so broad in a way and so deep that we could go on and talk. And I'm also welcoming other people chiming in into your question. I see a couple of other.
Yeah, wonderful. Larry and then Freddie. And then I just wanted to call out, I know we have some persons from Africa, so I'm really interesting to know how this applies culture and climate where you are. So if you want to share with us, please put up your hand. Larry.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for that presentation. You seem to have really covered intentionality and awareness, which is so important because they come to it in different ways. And this is really a great event. It seems to make them aware and get them engaged and excited. But the problem always seems to come after they go home. What kind of tools do you provide, or is there any follow-up to sustain the energy or touch base to, again, because the functional fixedness will kick in eventually, and they'll go back to doing what they do generally, unless there's been some sort of deep change in the organization that people are going back to. Is there anything that you provide the people at CREA during the event, or is there any follow-up afterwards, et cetera?
What a great question, Ray. Because it's critical. And we know that in any organization, in all parts, and that's why then the environment you go back to is so critical and important. We talk about client, that imagine people going to a training, then they go back to their own environment and nothing supports what they learn about that creativity things or the processes and all of that. So what do we do? I think that the power is not really a tool, but the power that we have is what we call the creative learning community, right? And so in a way also Global Creative GCI is a creative community, right? The learning community, and is this ability for people to stay in touch, whether it's in their own program. So when we have the people registered to a morning program for 3 alpha day, they will be together. They create a community. They create a cohort, for example, and that cohort stays in touch. That cohort support each other, right? If they choose to, obviously, there is no coercion, right? That's but creating that kind of let's continue to nurture this together, whether it's the email, is WhatsApp, or whatever is the group that we do that. Now then, you have also the conversation and the encounter we have at CREA in which people really network and get that kind of things. So it's all through network, it's all through community. Now, what you say is really important because for us at CREA, and from a leadership perspective, we know that we have a lot more work to do around that. And very frankly, sometimes it's because we are exhausted. It's a lot of work and volunteer work. Would we like actually to have more continuity and more follow-up online, what we call the continuous CREA, right? Going on throughout the year. Yes, we want. If we have more people engaged and happy to volunteer, we would love to extend even then more with our own guidance. It's organically happening, but it would be great if we could be able to sustain it more, for sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Freddie.
Thank you, Laura. Your presentation triggered so many thoughts, so many new ideas in my mind. One in particular is I was thinking about a personal, introspective culture. And the thing that triggered that thought as a result of your presentation is an experience that I had yesterday. There's another organization that's just emerging called Meaning Sphere, which is dedicated to helping people become aware of their meaning in their work. And it seems to me that your concept of culture might be expanded. I say expanded, which is divergent rather than convergent, because I see it expanded within an individual, personal, reflective, introspective culture where they probably, or I probably was not aware of my own internal culture. I always think of culture as a popular community concept. But you triggered this whole idea of a reflective, personal, introspective culture and how that might even affect the broad community culture.
That's so interesting. I mean, I'm glad I have triggered that because it's really so stimulating to think about the culture within ourselves and how our different kind of culture, as you said, is you have values, you have beliefs, right? You have norms, you have all of this part that is so deeply ingrained into yourself. So, what is the culture you believe in? What is your intrapersonal, right? Culture and how these impact and affect others. And I think that you said something that resonates with me that has to do with meaning and meaningfulness, right? A lot. And I think that when I connect intrapersonal culture and inside of that, I go always to one word, that is purpose. What's your purpose? It's purpose is, in my view, from an individual and personal phase, what is that you are purported to do? What do you want to work on? So purpose is great. It is a great element of the interpersonal and introversional culture, I believe. If it makes sense to you.
Thank you.
Tanya also wrote in the chat that foresight measures problems solving preference. Well, maybe you want to expand this or maybe ask something else.
Your question.
My question was different from that. I was just adding a little bit to that about foresight. My question, Laura, is that, in listening to this and noticing what we're about at the GCI and what you're about is how might we develop this creative culture or climate online? I mean, we have, us all here are in this work, which is wonderful to be here together with you. And thank you again. How might we expand this into the broader community? I mean, this is so important what we're doing, and it's so at risk because of, we all know, just the dynamic of education and all the rest of it. But I'm wondering if there's an opportunity here to explore how we might impact broader communities with this idea of creative climate as leaders advocating for creative climate. I don't have an answer. I mean, I'm just curious, like, how can we really impact this further?
I think it's a wonderful question, Tanya. I don't have the answer. I think I'm very grateful to Elizabeth for opening this to me when we were at CREA, because that was when she said, we can do this. We have a symposium. Then we said, no, we can do a webinar and all of that. I said, wow, how wonderful it would be to start connecting our organizations. Because the interesting thing was that Elizabeth came to CREA and she said, I never known about this place. She said, we've been around for 22 years, right? And so the reality is, yes, we need to connect more. And how might we do that? Of course, through the digital world, which is what can connect, is connecting us today and can connect us more in the future. And I'm all for, like, me and the team, our team, I think, to really open, to connect and do more, work together to impact more people who might not even know we exist, GCI exists, and all of that. And they might really more support for creativity.
I think it's something we need to continue to think about at the GCI. And thank you, Laura. You would be great in this with us. So yeah, it just provided a lot of food for thought.
Thank you. Ruth, you have a comment or a question? A comment, maybe what Tanya was saying?
Yes, so we thank you very much. Tanya, we have 3 minutes left from this webinar, and Ruth has a question in the chat, and you also have your hand raised. Do you want to ask that question yourself?
Yeah, I'm going to ask it in 10 seconds or say it. I believe that everything you've talked about, Laura, also improves our health individually and together. I think, and yes, Melissa's nodding because she's done a lot of work on that. So I think that's a way in for a lot of people. They're like, we don't want to do this. Wait, we might live longer. That's my question. How do you think this impacts our health?
Oh, a lot. And I think that I am actually so curious and interested in the topic of creativity and well-being, and how actually well-being, how really impacts. And in climate, for sure, what we know through, actually, this was a very interesting outcome of the Gallup group research, that they really did a lot of longitudinal work and analysis of well-being at work, especially. And then they came out right after the pandemic, as you guys, like the well-being at work was a really important issue. And they discover actually that a very crucial role is the manager. So again, is leadership. So how much people, even at the middle manager level or supervisor level, can actually impact the well-being of people, just impacting and affecting those dimensions in the environment. So the quest is not just about creativity, it's also about well-being, it's about health. My colleague, Dr. Molly Ollinger, at the Center for Applied Imagination, has a great, much of her work and study and research has been on well-being and creativity. And I encourage to follow Molly Ollinger on what she's been doing and writing about that.
Thank you very, very much. And I know that Dr. Richards also has written extensively on this topic. So
Awesome.
among other things, everyday creativity. So yeah. Laura and everybody, thank you very, very much for this webinar. It has been wonderful to have you here. And you have the date set for April for the CREA conference. Anybody who wants to experience this wonderful atmosphere in person and learn about facilitation, creative problem solving, and applied creativity can be there.
Please connect with me if you're interested. If you're interested also to come propose a workshop, you find me on LinkedIn, Laura Barbero Switalski. So please connect with me. And I just want to have an opportunity to acknowledge this presentation. What would I do? It's really the work of myself and all my team and my leadership team. And particularly, I have a thank for Paolo Sbottoni, who put together this great slide deck and the photo, and all of that is my a teammate. And I just want to make sure that you all know that this is the effort of a group of people who, like you guys at the GCI, work hard, right? Doing volunteer work to bring these just out of the passion that we have for this topic of creativity.
Thank you very much. And we will be promoting more things on our LinkedIn page.
Yes, thank you so much.
Recording
and please
will
reach
be,
out to me. Yeah,
this recording
reach out
will
to me
be on our,
individually. You have more question, just I don't think we put my email there, but the LinkedIn is a great probably place where you can find me and just ask me for the connection if you don't have it, and then let's start building more bridges, right?
Franklin, do you have a last comment? That is 30
Yes.
seconds.
The last comment is that I've sent you a friendship request already on LinkedIn. And
okay.
I am looking forward for the seminar. I really want to be present. What you're doing is so great. This is real good work, because like it helps us solve some of the most important societal issues we have across the globe. So I think it is important that we spread this across faculties, across the various programs we undertake, because this creativity puts human at the center. And that is the knowledge of the 21st century we all look forward to.
Thank you, Franklin. I really hope you can come and we can talk and connect about that. I'm just saying we want to start really envision a way that we can start creating the society we want for this century. And we are all aware of the dangers and the opportunities. And so it's up to all of us to work together.
And with that being said, we end
thank you for your
this
time.
webinar, and we thank everybody present and everybody who is tuning in to us later. Thank you.
Thank you again. Thank you for the opportunity, and let's be in touch. Bye.